I've been betrayed. I trusted someone and they did me dirty. I feel like betrayal is the emotion that I hold on to the longest. I have felt betrayed several times throughout my 20s, in personal relationships, in work relationships. I'm not talking about the details of any one particular incident in this video. I try not to be messy on this channel, but I am talking about that personal, deep feeling of betrayal. People who were friends becoming enemies, people taking credit for work that I had poured myself into and separating me from my own story in a very public way, people turning other people against me, people who I trusted becoming hostile to the point where third parties need to get involved. Oh, there has been plenty of behind-the-scenes drama in my life, honey, and while I'm not here to spill any specific tea, I do want to pass on some of the life lessons that I've learned from dealing with those initial betrayals in my early adulthood, because it's taken a lot of emotional processing and emotional maturity to be able to move past the bitterness. So here's how I've experienced betrayal, how I've managed that emotion, and how I've managed to move forward. Hey, it's your girl Ahsante, helping you move consciously and creatively through life, so let's go. The first thing I've had to get over is feeling at fault myself when I've been betrayed by another person. I've really been one to internalize a sense of betrayal, and it's easy to see someone else's bad behavior and poor treatment of you as some sort of reflection on what you did, which makes you question your behavior. And then you start calling into question your own character and your own sense of self and your own motivations. Some of this comes from where you center your sense of self, which I talked about in my video on confidence without ego. If you're drawing your sense of confidence from being a well-liked person and then someone betrays you, it's like, whoa, but I thought I was a good person. I thought I was doing my part in this relationship or contributing to this organization or whatever the case is. And now, because I'm being treated poorly, I second guess whether I've been that upstanding, contributive person that I see myself as. I thought I knew what the relationship was, but the trust has been shattered. So now I know this isn't what I thought it was. So I'm now questioning everything else that led up to this moment, including whether I was a positive force in the relationship. I've definitely called my own self-worth into question. What did I do to deserve this? Did I provoke something? Is there something that I didn't say, should have said, could have done to prove that I deserve the treatment that I should have gotten? Especially when the person who's betrayed me is a peer. And especially in a workplace situation, since it's so meritorious on the face, as you're supposedly being compensated and credited according to your level of work and according to your level of contribution. But when you start to ask yourself, what could I have done to avoid being done wrong by someone else? Like, the other person is the operative element in that sentence, right? The onus is not on you. Sure, maybe there's a way that you could have approached the situation differently, but if someone else has gone back on their word, revealed something they shouldn't have, acted deceptively, if they've betrayed you, then ultimately they're the one at fault. I am coming at this from a personal development angle. I'm trying to always grow and learn from my mistakes and have the next time go better than the last time. So on some level, I'm looking back and saying, is there something I could have done to avoid this situation, or even to have seen it coming, seen a red flag, avoided it, gotten out of it sooner, etc. So that kind of reflection is valuable, yes. But then there's the acknowledgement that the other party is responsible for their behavior. They decide how they want to treat you. That's on them. I want to be living within my values. And so instead of using someone else's treatment of me or judgment of me to determine whether my behavior was appropriate, I have to reflect on whether I was doing the right thing according to my values and get my sense of self-worth and grounding from that point. And earlier in my adolescence, when I was betrayed, I didn't have that sense of confidence. I was a people pleaser, so I was very shaken. But as I've gotten older, I've, one, been able to recognize this feeling, see it for what it is, and therefore be able to contain my anger and let go of my hurt a bit better. And two, realize that the betrayal says more about them than it does about me. If someone's betrayed my trust, then, well, some people are just untrustworthy. Some people are manipulative. Some people are greedy. What you gonna do about it? It's like, look at the perpetrator of the injustice rather than looking at the abused and saying that the abused somehow deserved it. No, maybe the aggressor was just trying to be manipulative. You know, like maybe they were just being greedy and taking advantage of you and taking advantage of the situation, you know? Like, that's not on you, boo. Some people are gonna be mean to you for no good reason, or even because of their own insecurities, and that's something you can't do anything about. I used to say to myself, and I used to hear this all the time too, everything happens for a reason. Part of this comes from faith and being a person of faith, which I am. It's, involved with trusting God's plan, trusting that things will work out. So I agree with the sentiment behind the saying. But if you follow the logic of that statement, it'll have you searching for the reason why this terrible thing happened and can have you thinking that you did something bad to justify the bad thing that happened to you. And it's like, nope. Sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes you just get ripped off or screwed over and there's nothing you can do about it. When I was growing up, my mother passed on a set of 3 truisms to me. Life is not fair, people are not nice, and you will not always get what you deserve. This is like generational wisdom that's been passed down through the line of Black women trying to survive in this country. And of course, these are rules of thumb to keep in mind, not absolutes. And sometimes the truisms work to your advantage, sometimes to your disadvantage. So instead of believing everything happens for a reason, I now say that there's an opportunity in every change of circumstances. So that gets to the same sentiment of there's a way for this to work out. Maybe this is the universe pointing you in a certain direction. Maybe there's an opportunity in the future that only opens up because you've experienced this hardship without actually blaming you for the change in circumstances. So then the question becomes, okay, this terrible thing happened to me. I didn't necessarily deserve it. It is a betrayal. What opportunity does this unlock? Where can I go from here? And how can I use this new situation and set of circumstances and take something from it and move forward? As far as moving on, I've found the best thing for me to do is to remove myself from the people who betrayed me. And particularly when you're really attached to someone, that can be hard, right? Like if this is a partner, if this is a close friend, if this is a work environment, you've invested a lot of time and energy into those areas, and it can require a lot of big life changes to separate yourself from that. Moving, changing jobs, changing social circles. And when I was younger, I made the mistake of sticking around because I wanted it to work out. I wanted to believe that the person would change or would realize the error of their ways and apologize, or that I could somehow make amends so that I could stay in the environment that I had grown accustomed to, that I had loved. But that just hasn't worked out. But if someone has really personally betrayed me, then the trust is gone. I will probably never be able to trust them again. I can't trust that they won't hurt me again. And so I no longer feel safe around them. And if they're in a position where they can continue to affect my surroundings, affect my reputation with my other friends, affect my reputation at work with my livelihood, then I don't feel safe in those environments. So as harsh as it may sound, I found that it's best for me to completely cut ties as much as possible and go where the love is, go where I'm appreciated, even if that means venturing into new territory. And the times where I've not extracted myself, I have heavily regretted it. You deserve better than emotionally abusive behavior. And it's hard to move on when you have a constant reminder of the person who's betrayed you right there. So now I just leave. Great. Talk to you never. Banned, blocked, delete. There are plenty of people in the world. There are people who will treat you with the respect and care that you deserve. Go where the love is. I also try not to stew in my anger for too long. Anger is my strong emotion of choice. When it comes to venting, I get more angry than sad. I'm more of like a wanting to punch the wall person rather than wanting to cry into a puddle of my own self-pity person. I will not actually lash out. You will not see me slapping anyone on international television. But when I'm hurt, I do feel angry about it. But there are studies that show that venting actually doesn't decrease anger, and in some cases it can actually inflame anger. And really, you actively being angry at someone just uses up your own energy. So I do allow myself an initial moment to vent and take time to acknowledge the feeling and acknowledge that hurt. And then after I've taken my moment, I feel better about moving on. I like the analysis of anger that I read in the book, The Courage to Be Disliked, a fantastic read that I recommended before. It goes into Adlerian psychology, and part of that framework is the idea that people's emotions are doing something for them. If you're holding on to fear of something or anxiety around something for a prolonged period, then you're holding on to that emotion because on some level you want to be feeling that emotion. It's giving you some level of comfort. Maybe it's a reason for you to stay inside of your comfort zone. The theory goes that it's an emotion that's supporting you in some way, even if it's something that you say you don't want to feel. There's something that you're getting out of feeling that emotion. It's doing something for you. For me, I've realized in a couple of these instances that the feeling of I've been done wrong has been supporting a feeling of I was right, And so that feeling of wounded, righteous indignation has been supporting a sense of self-righteousness, right? It's been supporting my ego. I was so mistreated because I should have been treated better because I was doing the right thing, and that makes me the better person. So as a defense of this person who was really important to me just hurt me, you get, well, I was the better person. That's a direct defense mechanism to comfort you because you're feeling so hurt. And I realized that in order to let go of that feeling of hurt, I had to let go of the feeling of superiority too. And I didn't even realize that that feeling of superiority was there until I interrogated it. That's what the emotion had been doing for me. And so in order to let go of the hurt, I needed to let all of that go. Part of me processing and releasing those feelings is forgiveness. I love this definition of forgiveness, and this is a quote from Oprah, the queen of talk. Love me some Oprah, not gonna lie. And she says, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. Love that quote. Woo! I felt it. Forgiveness in that sense is just as much for you as it is for the other person. And really, you never have to tell someone else that you forgive them. You can just let them live with that. I feel like if someone has betrayed you, then you don't owe them anything. But sometimes you just owe it to yourself to let that go. The past is the past. It can't be any different. You can't go back and change it now. So it's no use spending your time wishing that you had been done better, wishing that you had said this or that they had done that. Ruminating, replaying the scene over, reliving it, harboring that resentment, that all takes energy, you know? It takes energy to be focused on this hurtful time that's in the past when you have life to live now. And of course, naturally, it can take a while to forgive and get over things. Now, you can forgive without forgetting, okay? People who have double-crossed me, trust I will not be working with them again, will not be making that same mistake twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, can't get fooled again. From that person's betrayal, you have just learned that they are jealous, entitled, untrustworthy, what have you, and that makes them a good person to remember to stay away from. So I will not be forgetting, but you can still work on the forgiveness part. The deeper the wound, the longer it might take to recover. The bigger the thing that was stolen from you, the more public the betrayal was, the more meaningful the relationship was, the harder it might be to just let it roll off your shoulder. Like, that chip can be pretty solid. There was one incident where it took me about 5 years to get over it. Like, it was a gradual filing down of the chip. That thing did not come off all at once. I basically had to get busy with other interesting things happening in my life and finding success elsewhere so that I no longer had the brain space to think about that old injustice, and so the history became irrelevant and the significance of that betrayal felt minimized. I remember seeing a YouTube video from Shannon Boodram and Andrea, both super talented creatives, and back in the day, they used to have a YouTube channel called Those Girls Are Wild. It was amazing, so fun, and insightful. This is like early 2010s. I am an OG fan. And then they broke up. And they didn't really talk about the details of why, but they each made their separate channels and went their separate ways. And they did a video 5 years later that's on Shan's channel about how they're ex-best friends and what caused their breakup and how they needed to move away from each other and how it took each of them 5 years to be able to process and cool off and be able to eventually be cool enough with each other to come back and talk about it calmly. And when I watched that video, I was like, okay, 5 years is not too long. That's not too long to process a major conflict, in my case, a major backstabbing, so I'm not out of range, and honestly, I felt a lot better about my own past and betrayal having watched that video. I will link it down in the description. So for anyone who might be watching this thinking, oh, but it's been a year since then, I should have moved on by now. Take your half a decade. Take it, I bequeath it to you, it is yours. So there's always been a point where I've been able to release it. It does take time, I can't rush it. Therapy is obviously a thing that can help here if you have access to that. I wound up kind of therapizing myself because I am always reflecting. But, you know, therapy is great when you can get it. We are very pro therapy on this channel. And then even once you feel like you've healed, once you feel like you've moved on, regaining trust in people can be difficult. It's worth being careful about who you trust. It can be difficult to judge sometimes, and there is often a level of risk. And it's that balance between attributing the behaviors to the specific people who did them rather than to the group that that person belongs to, whether that's gender, race, class, social group, really having that person be responsible for their actions. But at the same time, trying to see patterns for yourself, trying to see where that behavior might have come from, so that you don't get taken advantage of again. And there's a balance between those two things, between acknowledging that people are responsible for their own behavior and should not act in a manipulative way, while also trying to protect yourself as much as possible. I'm careful who I put my trust in. Of course, trust is earned and not given. So I'm careful about who I really confide in and who I consider to be a true friend. The circle of trust is privileged space. And I really pay close attention to how people treat me initially at the beginning of the relationship. It goes to that quote from Dr. Maya Angelou: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Once I've emotionally processed, the best revenge is living well. Anytime you've been treated unfairly, haven't been given your due, been snubbed, it's someone belittling your worth. It's someone trying to keep you down or put you in your place. And the best revenge is to render their betrayal inconsequential, because in the long term, you thrive anyway. You move beyond their perceived confinements from you. You ultimately don't need them to have a great time and a great life, even without their support. And that's part of why time heals wounds. Time will allow other people and events to fill my life and bring me joy and satisfaction and to give me other things to feel proud of. There are other people and places and environments that will appreciate everything I am and all that I have to offer, so I'm gonna have a good old-fashioned time anyway. If you liked this video, then you might also like the video that I did on mindfully gaining confidence. That'll be linked here. And if you really liked this video, then consider joining the brilliant beings who are the folks that make these videos possible. As always, remember to live spiritedly and think creatively, and I will see you next time.